They say silence is golden, but whoever coined that phrase clearly never had a neighbor like Kerren or tasted the soul-soothing bliss of vinyl era disco echoing through vintage speakers while folding your socks on a Tuesday afternoon. See, I'm not what you'd call a rule breaker by nature. I'm a retired accountant, for crying out loud. I used to audit spreadsheets for a living and got excited over a good set of color-coded tabs. Danger and rebellion to me is drinking caffeinated coffee after 3 p.m. But ever since my wife passed away 3 years ago, music became more than just background noise. It became my lifeline. I started my mornings with Donna Summer, shuffled through Earth, Wind and Fire during brunch, and let the Bee Gees take me into the night. It wasn't just music, it was a reminder that I was still here, still moving, still alive. But apparently, my joyful decibel therapy didn't quite fit into the pristine suburban harmony dictated by one HOA Karen. Karen, bless her over-contoured heart, is the self-appointed queen of our HOA. I say self-appointed because I'm pretty sure no one actually voted for her. She just showed up one day with a clipboard and a hunger for power that would make Napoleon blush. You couldn't so much as repaint your mailbox without Kerren emerging from the hedges like some sort of bylaw banshee, shrieking about community standards and visual cohesion. You think I'm exaggerating? Ask Bob from 2 houses down. He got a $75 fine because his bird bath looked too whimsical. It had a frog statue, for heaven's sake. If that's whimsical, then I'm the Easter Bunny. But I digress. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a laminated note taped to my door. I had just finished reorganizing the garage because yes, that's how I roll on a Sunday, and was feeling pretty good about life. Dear resident, the note read, "It has been brought to our attention that excessive noise is emanating from your property at inappropriate hours. Please refrain from playing loud music and respect the community's right to quiet enjoyment." It was signed in dramatic cursive, Kerren, HOA chairwoman. Now mind you, this was at 2:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday. I wasn't exactly blasting dubstep at midnight, just playing some Earth, Wind and Fire while tending my roses. That woman had the nerve to call September a public disturbance. I laughed it off at first, assuming it was a one-time thing. Maybe she was just having a bad day. Maybe she was allergic to fun. Either way, I turned the volume down a tad, out of neighborly courtesy. Big mistake. The second strike came a week later. This time, Kerren didn't bother with a note. She came in person, storming across the lawn like a mall cop on Black Friday, demanding I cease all musical activity during daylight hours because it was agitating her poodles. Yes, plural. Tiny little rats in sweaters that barked like squeaky toys in a blender. I tried reasoning with her. I really did. I even offered to limit my listening hours to between noon and 5, but she waved her clipboard like a scepter and declared that my music was a threat to neighborhood tranquility. She actually said that, like I was running an underground rave operation in my sunroom. Again, I tried to be reasonable. I bought noise-canceling curtains. I moved the speakers away from the window. I even started using headphones in the morning, but no matter what I did, it was never enough. The mere existence of my music, any music, offended her delicate suburban sensibilities. Kerren wasn't just anti-noise, she was anti-joy. It wasn't long before the rest of the HOA board started parroting her nonsense. Suddenly, I was getting official violation letters, complete with threats of fines and escalating consequences. It was all so dramatic. You'd think I had installed a fog machine and laser show in the driveway, which, at that point, honestly started to sound like a good idea. I mean, if I was going to be accused of turning the neighborhood into Studio 54, I might as well start living up to the reputation. That's when the idea hit me. Not just a petty revenge, but a spectacle. If Kerren thought my mellow Motown was disruptive, wait till she saw what a real disco experience looked like. I didn't just want to annoy her. I wanted to make my house a glowing, grooving, glitter-covered shrine to everything she despised. I wanted the whole neighborhood to boogie. It started small, harmless, really. I replaced my porch light with a color-changing LED bulb. Nothing illegal, nothing even particularly flashy. But Kerren noticed. Oh, did she notice? She marched over the next morning and said, "Gerald, your porch looks like a carnival ride." I smiled and said, "Thank you. That's exactly the vibe I'm going for." Her eye twitched. Victory. From there, things escalated beautifully. I invested in some tasteful lighting for the inside of the house. Pink and purple ambient glow strips along the ceiling. A touch of sparkle in the kitchen. Then came the sound system upgrade. If I was going to host a party for one, I needed surround sound. And yes, I absolutely got a disco ball. Why? Because life is short and glitter is forever. But the pièce de résistance, the cherry on top of my sequined revenge Sunday, was the Saturday night I invited my niece over. She's a wedding DJ on weekends to help me throw a quiet, casual dinner party, which of course was code for full-blown disco inferno. We even made invitations. "Bring your polyester and leave your HOA at the door," they read. It was glorious. We had cheese fondue, a homemade dance playlist, and a fog machine I borrowed from my church's youth group. Kerren? She lost her mind. She called the HOA emergency line. Yes, that's a real thing, and tried to shut us down. But here's the kicker. Every single neighbor she called to complain was already at my house busting a move. That night was the beginning of something beautiful. I realized I wasn't alone. People were tired of the HOA's nonsense, tired of tiptoeing around like we were in some Stepford cult, tired of being told that fun had to be beige and quiet, that music had to be confined to AirPods and celebrations had to end by 7 p.m. So I made a decision, a bold, glitter-filled, polyester-wrapped decision. I was going to turn my house into the disco I'd always wanted. Not out of spite, okay, a little out of spite, but because we deserved better. We deserved joy. We deserved dance breaks. We deserved to live. Of course, I knew it wouldn't be easy. Kerren wasn't going to give up without a fight. She'd wage her passive-aggressive war with bylaws and bulletins and all the HOA firepower at her disposal. But I was ready. I'd faced tax audits tougher than this. I had spreadsheets. I had receipts. And most importantly, I had a playlist that slapped. So bring it on, Kerren. You wanted quiet. Well, now you're getting glitter cannons. This was just the overture. The real show was about to begin. The Monday after, what I now refer to as the boogie uprising, I woke up to find a rolled-up citation notice rubber-banded to my garden gnome's head. Classy. Kerren had apparently started using my landscaping as her personal mailbox. The notice claimed I had violated 3 separate HOA bylaws in one evening. Section 7A on excessive artificial lighting, Section 3C on unauthorized social gatherings, and, my personal favorite, Section 9F, creating a disruptive atmospheric presence. I don't know who wrote that one, but I assume they were high on the fumes from their own self-importance. A disruptive atmospheric presence? What am I, El Niño? Normally this would be the part where a sane adult folds, apologizes, maybe turns the music down and slides back into the good graces of community politics. But not me. Oh no. You see, Kerren had made one critical miscalculation. She underestimated just how petty a bored, retired man with nothing to lose and a working credit card could get. The disco was no longer just my sanctuary. It was my battlefield, and if I was going to war, I was doing it in gold lame. I started with the driveway, a simple, understated touch, motion-activated multicolor LED uplights. Every time someone walked by, the pavement lit up like a runway at Studio 54. I added a little speaker that played a single note of Funky Town when triggered. Just one note, not enough to qualify as a song, not enough to be considered a violation, but just enough to remind Kerren every time she checked her mailbox that the funk was still alive. She hated it, claimed the lights gave her migraines, and the one-note jingle caused her poodle's auditory anxiety. I offered to buy them tiny earmuffs. She was not amused. Next came the curtains, or rather, the lack of them. I removed all the blinds from my front windows and replaced them with sheer, shimmery panels that glowed like the inside of a lava lamp. At night, the house lit up like a disco aquarium. I took to wearing sequined bathrobes and waving at Kerren whenever I caught her lurking behind her bushes with binoculars. She tried to report me for indecent exposure, but the HOA had to inform her that a bathrobe, however flamboyant, is still technically clothing. I made sure to add a wind chime shaped like a mirror ball outside my front door. It didn't even make sound, just flashed reflected light into her kitchen window every morning like a sparkly little sunrise. Then I escalated. Strategically, of course. You can't go full disco inferno too early. That's how you burn out. No, you have to build tension, plant the seed, let them feel safe, and then, when they think the storm has passed, you crank the bus and unleash Barry White. At 10 a.m. on a Sunday, I launched the Soul Brunch series. Every weekend, I hosted a morning gathering with pastries, coffee, and live music from a local college jazz trio I found on Craigslist. They were thrilled to play anywhere that offered free bagels and a non-judgmental audience. Kerren, of course, filed 6 complaints in 2 days. But here's the thing. The events were completely within the HOA's guidelines. I checked. I had permits. I followed noise ordinances. I even hired a sound engineer to prove that the decibel level was well under the county limit. And just to rub a little glitter into the wound, I invited the HOA's treasurer, a delightful woman named Marlene, who showed up in a bedazzled visor and requested 3 encores of boogie shoes. I started getting letters, not from Kerren. Those had moved from passive-aggressive to outright threatening months ago. No, these were from other neighbors. Actual letters, handwritten. Some had smiley face stickers. "Thank you for making this neighborhood fun again," one said. "I haven't danced since 1983, said another. One man, a retired dentist, brought over a lava lamp and said it had been sitting in his garage since Nixon resigned, and he thought I might give it a better life. I named it Geraldine and gave her a place of honor on my kitchen counter. But just when I thought I had things under control, when the glitter had settled and the neighborhood seemed to be swaying to my rhythm, Kerren retaliated hard. She hosted an emergency HOA meeting. Not your run-of-the-mill Tuesday evening affair with stale cookies and passive-aggressive PowerPoint slides. No, this was a full-blown coup attempt. She sent out hand-delivered invitations, parchment paper, gold trim, and wax seals like we were living in Victorian England. Neighborhood Emergency Summit, reclaiming our community spirit. Please. The only thing she wanted to reclaim was her stranglehold on the fun. Naturally, I attended in full disco regalia, velvet jumpsuit, platform shoes, and a necklace shaped like a tiny record player that actually spun. I walked in like John Travolta, with a mortgage and a grudge. Kerren was not pleased. She opened the meeting with a slideshow titled "The Decline of Neighborhood Decorum," a timeline featuring grainy photos of my house taken from God knows where. I half expected the next slide to say, "Evidence of witchcraft." She accused me of inciting community unrest, creating unsanctioned disturbances, and harboring party paraphernalia. I asked if she meant my fondue set or the extra beanbag chairs. Then came the pièce de résistance, a proposal to amend the HOA bylaws to ban themed lighting, dance-based gatherings, and any audio equipment not deemed necessary for daily function. I raised my hand and asked who got to decide what constituted necessary. She said, "The HOA board." I said, "And who's on the board?" She said, "Currently me. Democracy, folks." What Kerren didn't anticipate was the resistance. One by one, the neighbors I'd serenaded with disco and cinnamon rolls started speaking up. Mild-mannered retirees who'd spent years mowing their lawns in fear were now standing, shaking their hips slightly as they did, and saying things like, "We like the music," and "It's nice to feel alive again." One woman, Mildred from Lot 6, literally threw down her walker and shouted, "Let the man dance." It was glorious. I swear I heard a funk bass line start playing softly in the distance, probably just my phone accidentally unmuting, but still, it felt spiritual. The vote to amend the bylaws failed. Kerren stormed out, muttering something about calling the county and seeking legal intervention. I offered her a to-go bag with some leftover disco cookies shaped like stars. She declined, but I knew she wasn't done. People like Kerren never go quietly. They regroup. They strategize, they sharpen their pencils and reload their ink cartridges. A week later, I received a certified letter from a law firm, an actual cease and desist. "Mr. Patterson," it read, "your continued actions have resulted in significant distress to surrounding residents and may constitute a public nuisance under Municipal Code 14.22b. Oh no, a municipal code. How terrifying. I framed it and hung it in my guest bathroom. Then came the zoning inspector, a nice enough man named Ed who wore a vest and looked exhausted. He did a walkthrough, chuckled at the mirror tiles in the hallway and said, "Look, Gerald, technically you're in the clear, but maybe ease up a little. I offered him a mimosa and a Donna Summer record. He declined both, but winked on the way out. The final straw, for Kerren at least, was the disco mailbox. It was a work of art, chrome finished, shaped like a turntable, and when you opened it, it played a little clip of Super Freak. The mailman loved it. Kerren did not. She called the mayor's office. I know because I got a lovely call from the assistant mayor who said, "Sir, I just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. My mom lives down the street and she says your dance nights cured her arthritis. You're welcome, Edna." But this wasn't just about a feud anymore. It had become something bigger. The community was coming alive again. People were talking, laughing, dancing. Someone even started a newsletter called the Glitter Gazette. And me? I was thriving. Every night I threw open my windows, blasted some Bee Gees, and danced like my knees didn't creak. Because sometimes, when life hands you lemons, you turn your house into a lemonade-scented disco palace and invite the whole block. Of course, Kerren wasn't going down without a final move, and oh, she had one more in her. One final act of HOA tyranny that she thought would shut me down for good. But what she didn't realize is you can't stop the groove. Not with bylaws, not with cease and desists, not with even the angriest poodle brigade in town. No, the beat was only getting started. There's a strange moment of calm that settles in, right before a storm. You know, that eerie, too quiet kind of stillness where even the wind stops to watch what's about to go down. That was my street on the morning Kerren made her final move. I was sipping my usual cup of disco-themed coffee, French roast with a little glittery cinnamon on top, because why not sparkle from the inside out, when a flatbed truck rolled down the street, slower than a sloth, with a hangover. On the back of it, a sign. Not just any sign, mind you. This thing was a monstrosity. 7 feet tall, cast iron frame, digital scrolling text at the bottom, and smack dab in the middle, a photo of me. Yes, me, mid-disco. Pose with the caption, "This is what's destroying our community." Beneath that, a bulleted list of my crimes that looked like something out of a villainous press conference. Noise pollution, light aggression, senior seduction, unauthorized sequins. I nearly choked on my glitter kino. The truck parked in front of Kerren's yard, like it was laying siege to the neighborhood. She strutted out in a blazer that probably still had mothballs in the pockets and posed next to her sign, like she'd just discovered fire. She even called the local news. They didn't show up, but that didn't stop her from giving a full interview to her Ring camera while her poodles barked in the background like backup singers from a haunted Motown act. Now, you might be thinking, surely this is where Gerald throws in the towel, packs up the disco ball, surrenders to the HOA overlords. And if you're thinking that, you clearly haven't been paying attention. You see, what Kerren failed to understand, what all tyrants fail to understand, is that once you give the people a taste of the boogie, you can't just snatch it away and expect peace. No, the disco revolution was already in full swing, and I was the sparkle-suited general of this suburban funk army. I responded the only way I knew how, with glitter and vengeance. That evening I launched Operation Boogie Blitz. First, I built a stage right in my backyard, covered it in reflective tiles and added LED strips that changed color with the bass. My neighbor Tom, former contractor, part-time ukulele teacher, helped me construct it in exchange for a lifetime supply of disco brownies. I don't know what's in disco brownies, but apparently they taste like Studio 54 and regret, according to Mildred from Lot 6, and she loves them. Next, I installed sound dampening panels on all of my property borders. That way, I could keep the funk inside my property lines, but crank the bass to the moon. That's right, I made my house into the world's first suburban silent disco compound. Guests wore wireless headphones synced to my playlist. From the outside, silence. From the inside, earth, wind, and fire live in your ears while you two-step next to a man in orthopedic glitter shoes. That man being me. Kerren lost her mind. She filed so many noise complaints, the city sent over a social worker to check if she was okay. Apparently, she'd been heard yelling, "I can feel the music in my bones," at least twice a day, despite there being zero sound waves crossing the property line. The social worker stayed for coffee and left with a mini disco ball keychain. Said it was the most fun she's had on duty all year. But I wasn't done, not even close. I began hosting themed nights. There was Moulin Groove, a French disco night, complete with berets, wine coolers, and accordion remixes of ABBA hits. Saturday night Fight Club, where we held silent air guitar competitions in sequins jackets. And my personal favorite, Groove for the Troops, a charity event where all proceeds went to local veterans. We raised over $2,000 and accidentally reunited two old Navy buddies who hadn't seen each other in 40 years. They spent the entire night doing the worm and reminiscing about the time one of them got court-martialed for disco dancing in uniform. It was beautiful. But even as the community rallied around the glitter, Kerren doubled down. She started posting flyers on everyone's mailboxes warning of moral decay and the infiltration of dance cults. She accused me of harboring mind control lasers and claimed my disco ball was a government surveillance device. To be fair, it is shiny enough to blind a crow, but that's hardly grounds for a federal investigation. She even went on the local AM radio station. Yes, people still listen to AM radio, and ranted about how I had single-handedly undone decades of proper neighborhood behavior. The host cut her off halfway through her rant and played Stayin' Alive as a joke. I sent him a thank you basket of glitter cookies and a VHS copy of Xanadu. Now this would be the point in most stories where the villain goes too far, makes a critical mistake, and the hero swoops in to save the day. And lucky for me, Kerren's final act of sabotage was just that stupid. She tried to have my house rezoned. Yes, she submitted paperwork to the county claiming I had converted my home into an unauthorized entertainment venue and requested that it be reclassified as a commercial property. That would have subjected me to new taxes, inspections, and worst of all, permits. Sweet, sparkly permits. Red tape designed to strangle joy with bureaucracy. But guess what? You can't rezone a house unless you can prove it's being operated as a business. And thanks to my generous policy of free admission and complimentary finger sandwiches, I wasn't making a dime. I was just a very enthusiastic host with a questionable fashion sense and a killer sound system. Still, I wasn't about to let it go unpunished. So I did what any logical, level-headed, semi-retired maniac would do. I went public. That's right. I turned my silent disco into a movement. I created a website, discojustice.org, still pending. But imagine the logo, a gavel wearing sunglasses. The homepage featured testimonials from neighbors, photos of poodles wearing mini afro wigs, all voluntarily, of course, and a blog where I chronicled every ridiculous HOA complaint in glorious detail. I even started printing shirts, "Make Funk, Not War," property of the Groove District. My HOA hates joy. They sold faster than lawn flamingos on clearance. I used the proceeds to upgrade the disco ball to a solar-powered model with laser projections. It now paints the night sky with shimmering, swirling stars every evening like God decided to DJ on weekends. And then, just when I thought things couldn't possibly get funkier, I received a letter. But not from the HOA, not from the county, from the office of the mayor. Apparently word of my community revitalization had reached City Hall. The mayor herself, one Judith Montgomery, a sharp-dressed woman with a no-nonsense bun and a closet full of power blazers, wanted to visit, not to shut it down. Number she wanted to honor it. Turns out her mother lives in our neighborhood, and ever since she started attending the low-impact disco yoga classes on my lawn, led by Janet from Lot 9, who discovered she could touch her toes again if cool and the gang was playing. She's been more active, more social, and significantly less cranky. The mayor showed up that Friday, wore sequins, brought cookies, declared it Disco Appreciation Day, and posed for a photo beneath the giant glitter arch we built over my driveway. Kerren watched it all unfold from her porch, face twisted like someone had replaced her tea with lemon-scented rage. But I knew this was just the beginning of the end. Because if Kerren was seething before, now she was positively radioactive. The silent disco wasn't just a party, it was a statement, and it had made her irrelevant. Still, she wasn't quite done with me yet. No, her final act was coming, and trust me, it would be the glittery, glorious showdown to end all HOA drama. You know the old saying, give a man a glitter ball and he'll dance for a night. Teach him to disco and he'll bring down an HOA. No? Well, it should be a saying because it perfectly sums up the last chapter of this absurd suburban saga. Now, if you thought Kerren was going to fade quietly into a doily-covered chair and knit her anger into tea cozies, you clearly underestimated the villainy of a woman who once filed a noise complaint because a wind chime made unauthorized musical sounds. After her attempt to rezone my home flopped harder than her husband's comb-over, she did what any control freak cornered by funk would do. She declared war, the kind of war where the weapons are bylaws and petty forms, and the battlefield is a cul-de-sac where the mailboxes all lean slightly to the left because Kerren insisted on installing them herself in 2003. It started with a letter, not just any letter, a cease and desist letter printed on scented stationery that reeked of rosewater and resentment. She claimed I was operating an unlicensed event venue and mentally manipulating the elderly with rhythmic hypnosis. That's a real quote. I framed it and hung it in my disco bathroom, right above the lava lamp bidet. Naturally, I ignored it. What's she gonna do? Arrest me with her crocheted handcuffs? But then came the anonymous tip to the fire department. Something about hazardous electrical wiring and a suspicious amount of extension cords. They sent over a sweet firefighter named Bryce who inspected my setup and left after 30 minutes with a plate of disco cookies and an invitation to Funky Hat Friday. Bryce now DJs our monthly Fire and Funk nights in full uniform. You're welcome, ladies. Still, Kerren wasn't done. Next, she tried getting me banned from the neighborhood newsletter, that sacred scroll of watercolor clip art and passive-aggressive gardening tips. Her reasoning that I had hijacked community discourse by submitting 3 consecutive articles about the health benefits of disco, which, I'll have you know, were fact-checked, footnoted, and included a quote from a chiropractor named Steve, who said, disco saved my back. But Kerren's pièce de résistance, her true final boss move, was the petition. She went door to door with it, marched her orthopedic shoes right up to every porch in the subdivision, demanded signatures to ban all themed gatherings, eliminate unauthorized glitter usage, and enforce a strict 7 p.m. silence rule. She even brought muffins, bran, unsweetened, weaponized fiber. Problem was, nobody signed. Well, except Herb from Lot 14, but he signs everything. He once accidentally joined a medieval reenactment society because he thought he was entering a pancake raffle. You see, by this point, the neighborhood wasn't just tolerating my disco lifestyle, they were thriving in it. People were smiling more, walking more, dancing more. Marriages were being rekindled. Joints were getting looser. Someone even painted a mural of my face on the back of the community clubhouse. It wasn't great art. Looked like a cross between John Travolta and a turnip, but it was the thought that counted. So when Kerren finally tried to hold a community vote to exile me from the HOA, I decided it was time to go full Saturday night siege. I rented a fog machine. Actually, I rented 3, along with laser lights, a full-size dance floor, and a professional MC named Dion, who looked like a disco version of Morgan Freeman. He narrated the entire evening like it was the end of a war documentary. We held a block party, number A, Block Festival. The whole cul-de-sac turned into Studio 54 with bingo. There was a conga line around the mailboxes, a mobility scooter drag race, glow stick tai chi, even a foam pit for the grandkids, and one very enthusiastic grandma named Lorraine who didn't resurface for 20 minutes. I gave a speech Or rather, I delivered a monologue while standing atop my mailbox in platform shoes and a cape that read, "Let there be boogie." It wasn't Shakespeare, but I meant every word. "Neighbors," I bellowed, "when they try to take away our music, we dance harder. When they call our joy a crime, we throw a glitter parade. When HOA Karen comes at us with rules, we respond with funk, friendship, and flashing lights. Cheers, applause." One guy threw his walker in the air. I later learned it wasn't his. It was a loaner from the community center, but still, the spirit was there. And then, just when the night hit peak euphoria, the cops showed up. Yep. Kerren had made one last desperate call, claimed there was an illegal rave threatening national security. A bit dramatic, even for her. But guess what? The officers were amazing. They didn't shut us down. They joined. One did the electric slide in full gear. Another slow danced with Mildred under the disco lights. And the youngest one took a selfie with me, captioned "Protect and Boogie," and posted it on the department's official page. That post went viral, like cable news viral. The next morning I woke up to interviews, requests from all the big networks. My email looked like a glitter bomb exploded in a newsroom. People were inspired, moved, curious about how a retired guy with a love for polyester and parliament could spark a movement with nothing but music, determination, and a dream of funk-based justice. As for Kerren, well, the HOA held an emergency meeting, not to reprimand me, to remove her. Turns out, violating neighborhood unity, filing false reports, and weaponizing baked goods are frowned upon, even by the most uptight of rule keepers. They voted her out unanimously, except Herb, who thought he was voting for a pie contest. Kerren moved 2 weeks later, sold her house to a lovely couple who immediately put up wind chimes and joined our silent salsas on Sundays. The grass on her lawn grew in greener, the air got lighter, the poodles finally stopped wearing matching turtlenecks, and me, I kept dancing. I upgraded the silent disco system, started giving boogie therapy sessions every Tuesday, even got a local grant to build a senior center dance deck, complete with disco balls, safety rails, and one of those vibrating floor machines that jiggles your knees in a way that makes you feel 20 again. Life got louder, happier, shinier, and so, my friends, remember this: when life tells you to turn the music down, crank it up. Add some lights, and never ever let the Karens win. Because in this neighborhood, we don't stop the music, we are the music. And as long as there's glitter left in the garage and earth, wind and fire in the speakers, this disco never dies.